bonus edition of just joshing today because I already streamed earlier. Zachary was supposed to join me yesterday. Things happened, as things do sometimes. So
Yes.
today he has to come here. And now he has to deal with me. He can't run and hide no more.
All
How
right.
you doing,
Well,
man?
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I do. I always enjoy meeting new people and talking to them and kind of figuring out how to make them tick. And Mickey's always really nice when I go, hey, I need some creative edge people. Well, this time he came to me, it was like, yeah, I got some creative edge people to interview. So it's like, okay, cool. Who you got? And it's like, all right, let's just all meet.
Yeah,
So are you Canadian or you live in the States?
I'm from the States. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So because he started as a Canadian contingent, he kind of he has expanded. Now he's taking over the world little by little by little by little. So
little by little. Yes.
yes, yes. So like, are you an author by trade? Like, what is this your passion, or do you got like other plans for world domination too?
So, writing has always been a big part of what I saw myself doing. So, I do have the one novel out, a short story, workbook, and my second novel, the second in the series, is coming out in March, which I'm very excited about.
That's really cool.
Um, but yeah, so it's not my day job yet, but I'm hoping that eventually it will be enough
So
that
you
I
trying to
can
join the
quit.
rest of us in getting out of this employment crap.
Yeah, I mean, I love teaching, but at the end of the day, like, it's a job um, that is sometimes super underappreciated and underrespected. So if I can get out, I will.
You know what? I think that's fair. Um, Teaching and writing are very like I've interviewed a lot of authors who happen to be teachers as well. Like that's
Mhm,
usually their day job, and I get it because teaching is an all-in job. Like, to do it
mhm.
well, it's totally an all-in job, and because Lord knows, um, parents. It depends on the parent, but I think by and large, parents respect teachers, right? By and large, um, the education system, I have serious questions about respecting the teachers they
Mhm.
have.
Yeah.
Governments, I don't think. Well, there was a very interesting thought. I remember way back. I used back in my day when I could talk to clouds and all that other wonderful bullshit. Um, I remember ancient history class was one of my favorite classes. That was definitely one of the things that helped form me to who I am today, for better or for worse.
Mhm.
And one of the things he pointed out was that usually enlightened times usually had supported by great teachers, and great teachers were
Mhm.
supported by the system. I, do you mind I ask which state you're in?
Right now, I'm in New Mexico, although that's about to change.
Okay, actually, yeah, that's actually a very perfect spot, actually, because I've seen the public school system in Arizona, especially in the middle and nowhere. Essentially, academics are, I'm not going to say completely ignored, but
Hmm.
definitely don't aren't as respected as they should be.
Yeah, New Mexico is actually last in the country in terms of education, both in quality and in how much it's valued. I'm not sure why that is. It's very interesting for me. Um, People don't see it from obviously my parents or from my last name because I got my dad's last name, but I'm Hispanic and the child of a second generation American. So a lot of that immigrant spirit is still there. And education was really pushed when I was a kid. And my mom is a teacher. Um, my dad is really well educated, and his mother was a teacher for part of her career. Um, so I have a family of teachers. And the experience that I've had here, even though it's predominantly Hispanic, it's very different, I'd say. I think that maybe different Hispanic cultures approach education differently because my family is Cuban, whereas New Mexico is largely like Americanized Mexicans. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There are some cultural differences that I see there. Nothing against it. It's just I see the difference in how it's approached.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't know how much you need the teaching job, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, the depths
Yeah,
and
that's not
darkness.
why we're here.
That's not why we're here. Although, but I did kind of like. I could see why a teacher would be. I'm not saying discouraged is the right word for you. I don't think that's. I think it's more like you have other passions you want
No.
to do,
Yeah. I
right?
mean, creative writing is definitely sort of my main focus in terms of the career trajectory. Um, I'm starting my master's degree in creative writing in January. And so eventually I would like to teach creative writing full time, as in that's the only thing I teach. Right now, because I teach English and a couple other subjects, it's sort of on a back burner where it's not at the forefront of what I teach, um, but it's a part of it. But I'd like it to be the main thing I teach and the main thing I do.
Yeah, because English, like, don't get me wrong, being great, like a general English can be amazingly fun. And there's been, I was very blessed with like great English teachers when I was back in my day. Like I said, we're talking to clouds again. But that all said, like I said, students want to care,
Mm-hmm.
and the best. And when the system is designed not necessarily to have that, to create that care, I could definitely, and then we'll veer away from this because again, I don't want you getting too much trouble on this show.
Right.
But your system, the system, some of the systems I've seen in the United States, it's very clear to me that teaching is not there so much to help encourage independent thought, action, ideas, passion, caring. It's there to basically facilitate moving people up in a system that, from what and I don't care which country it is, I think in North America, that's
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally flawed, right?
And that's part of the reason I chose to teach private, um, just because there's a little bit more flexibility with how it's approached.
Yes, but like that's what I've noticed, and I can't fault anybody making the choice of, you know what, I want to do something else. And like I said, it is an all or nothing. Like it is a profession that can definitely break your heart if you let it. And I've seen it. That all said, I've seen some amazing people that do teach anyway and do an amazing job. So it's one of those things where. But if your heart's not in it, you're not going to be that teacher. You're going to want to move into other things, and it
Yeah.
sounds like it's kind of what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in it for the kids, but I think just the stuff around it is where I'm kind of like, eh.
Well, and if you feel it, you're going to resent it. So I mean, you might as well, if you can move on now, you might as well work towards that now because you don't ever want, especially with a job like that, you do not, because ultimately, it isn't you that's going to suffer; it's the kids.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how it goes. All right, we're done talking about the evils of the education systems of North America. That's another conversation for when you do decide to move on to something else and you are out. We can have that conversation in full. But
Yeah. I
for
mean,
another,
it's a conversation that does need to be had, but maybe this isn't the forum right now.
I mean, it's not. Maybe it's just. I feel with you, it's just the wrong time. I think for
Yeah.
you, it's the wrong time. Possibly a good place for it, but not the right time for it,
Yeah.
which is totally
Yeah.
fine. But what I will go with you then is you said I'm going to be a full time writer.
Mm-hmm.
What does that actually look like for you?
I think full-time writing, ideally for me, would still include some teaching, but on the college level. Probably in an MFA program, either starting it at a school that doesn't have it or contributing to a successful one that's already forming. And while teaching a couple classes focused on creative writing, continuing to write my books and to further that aspect of my career as well. I
So,
think that
so your master plan is still teach, but just creative writing, like you said
just
earlier.
writing,
You
yeah,
still want to teach then. You still absolutely want to teach. You just want to be very specific,
yes,
right? So you're gonna write to like towering bestsellers that people are like me are gonna be like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be awesome. That kind of stuff.
yeah. I think ultimately, and it's part of the reason why I hired Mickey to be my publicist. Um, if I can build my brand up and have recognition for my name where it stands for great stories and characters and great writing, then I'll add credibility to whatever program I decide to work for.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because like writing can look like a lot of different things going forward too. Like for example, I write book. My sixth book's coming out Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I was
But
looking at your blog. I saw that. Congratulations, by the way.
yeah,
That's
thank
awesome.
you, thank you. You know, I'm literally doing the proofs and final kind of like run tonight. So
Hmm.
I take a walk after this because I need to take a break because I've been doing podcast. I did writing stuff in the morning, did a
Yep.
stream, put out my podcast for the audio. Doing yeah, so I'm gonna need a break after this. But yeah, this is what I do, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's like I never expected like my writing career would lead to me opening my big mouth, and I love talking to people, but I never imagined this is what I would do. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it
for sure.
it does create opportunities you never anticipate.
It definitely does. I never, because I mean, of course, YouTube's been around forever. Then there's Instagram and Facebook, and I was never really a public person on any of those platforms. And then TikTok came out, and I was like, it's Gen Z's platform. I'm going to stay off of it because I'm still a millennial, even though I'm kind of on the younger side of it. But then I got on it, and um, I wouldn't say I necessarily took off. I'm still kind of waiting for that push. Not waiting. I'm trying to figure out what my niche it is to actually create engaging content that's consistent. But that in itself has created a lot of opportunities for me. Um, I had a lot of people download my book as part of a TikTok TBR takeover in early November, and I connected through that experience to Mickey, and because of that, I've had all of these interviews and guest blogs and all these different things, which has been so much fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, one thing links to another. It's just how it goes. So it's interesting that you say niche. So what do you write? Like, what's your genre?
So right now, I am working on a fantasy series, um, but it's not like medieval swords and all that. It's a fantasy series set in a modern world.
Okay.
So not our world. So it's not necessarily urban fantasy. It's this weird kind of blend of different fantasy genres between epic fantasy and urban fantasy, um, and high fantasy that sort of all blended together.
So if I were to like to put this in like perspective, are we talking Nine Princes in Amber, Prince Cora and Roger Zelazny? Are we talking Stephen King's Dark Tower? But these are the one, and I'm picking those in particular
Yeah.
because they fit what you're going for. It sounds like anyway.
I would almost say Once Upon a Time, like the TV show, if it had been its own separate world, if it wasn't set in our world.
Okay. Okay.
So, and I'll be completely honest, I did not read either of those books that you mentioned. Um, I've read a lot of more like YA fiction
So
and
what did you read?
older fantasy. Um, like two of my biggest influences for the series that I'm working on right now were C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia and The
Okay.
Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien.
Old school. I'm a big C.S. Lewis guy. I love C.S. Lewis. I prefer his.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't hate Narnia, but I love his nonfiction better. be perfectly honest with you.
His
Right?
nonfiction is pretty good. Some of it can be kind of dense to get through, just because
Some
of
of
how.
it, some of it, but he's a man that's very honest with himself, and
There.
that's what I always loved about his writing, is he doesn't try to pretend to be something he's not. That's
Yes.
who he is. He's a bit wordy, he's a bit of an academic, but at the same time, he's very passionate and he cares, and
Oh,
you can see
yeah.
that,
He
right?
threw
And
himself into everything he wrote fully.
yeah, yeah, the screw tape letters, I can understand like why he only did one of those, because a guy like that would hurt your brain. It's fun writing a bad guy to a point. You're in
Yes.
that headspace all the time. Oh, now you can tell that's what happened to him when he wrote Screw Tape. He was having fun with it at first, and it was like, yeah, I need to end this because this is terrible.
Well, I mean, he kind of followed the patient's life from sort of before conversion through to sort of strength of faith, which was very interesting. So I loved the way that he approached it, because he's telling the story of this man, but through the perspective of people, well, demons who are trying to destroy him and to keep him away from the things that are actually going to be good for him.
Or who try to, and they show you all the tactics and ways, and some of that stuff's like really devious stuff. It's actually great because what the Screw Tape letters is actually about is how to avoid distractions and recognizing the distractions for what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, a lot of the distractions in there are very subtle. Um, and, you can look at that from a non Christian perspective and realize that, yeah, there are things that are going to keep you from getting to your goals, things that are going to be detrimental. And then looking at that from a Christian perspective, which is where C.S. Lewis was coming from, the devil and his minions are insidious and pick on you in ways that are very specific. And it's a phenomenal read, I think, regardless of where you are faith or religion wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my favorite two. But my favorite two books of his are Mere Christianity and The Problem of Pain, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody understands suffering. That's why The Problem of Pain is such a really good book, because it's like, yeah, it sucks to suffer, but right, and that's what that book is. I just think Mere Christianity is just almost a magical book in of itself.
I love Mere Christianity. I mentioned that I taught private last year at the school that I taught at for my first year. I taught Mere Christianity and Screw Tape Letters, and that was a really fun read through with my students, because I read it with my 11th and 12th graders,
Yeah.
and so they were mature enough that they could get some of those larger concepts from Mere Christianity and Screw Tape. Sorry, I live next to a noisy road. Um, but those are really fantastically written, for sure.
Well, Mere Christianity has kind of inspired my whole approach for the pandemic, actually, because
Oh, really?
the mystical thing about CS is, and then we'll talk about Tolkien, although it won't be for as long because Robert Jordan ruined Tolkien for me, but we'll get to that in a bit. Um,
Fine.
but it's the fact that he Mere Christianity wasn't originally a book as we know it. It was
Mhm.
originally a BBC radio series that
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis spoke on while London was being bombed. And
Hmm.
I thought, and I still am always amazed when I think about it, because to me, I think it's the epitome of life goes on no matter what. Because on the one hand, it's the most absurd thing you can possibly imagine doing. What are you doing coming out preaching? We're about getting bombed. That's one side of that coin. Then there's the other side of that coin, which I think is so profound. Yeah, shit is happening right now. But you know what? I'm going to go on living.
Hmm.
And I think that is one of the most powerful, that like to me, that the story of the book is almost as impressive as the book itself, because what a powerful message that is. I thought, like, when the pandemic happened, I decided to like launch my own independent, like go start publishing my stuff independently,
Yeah,
because I'm like, it's now, it's never. You know what I mean? And yeah,
kind of the same story. Yeah.
and it's like, but I mean, I know some people it's like, well, why? I mean, it feels silly advertising my book during this. Like, no, it's not. Life goes on, and
Mm-hmm.
that's powerful. If you see this, even if someone goes with an advertisement, oh shit, another fucking advertisement. It's a bit of normalcy in life, right? I mean, right? I mean, it's very powerful to keep going and living, and it's easy to do it good when things are okay. Who you really are comes out in these times. It's not the other way
Oh,
around,
for sure.
right? So I still think like that book is like that's my favorite thing of his, hands down. I like Narnia, don't get me wrong, but yeah, his nonfiction was super profound, and for some of these
Oh, for
reasons,
sure.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, just showed how heroic he was. So, um,
I definitely agree. I mean, I love Narnia because it inspired me for my own series, but I admired C.S. Lewis's life so much. Even his personal life, aside from his career and writing, he married um, an American divorcee who had escaped an abusive relationship and helped her to raise two her two boys, which and he hadn't had any children, and so he became a father to I think it was a 12 and a 10-year-old at the time, um, and just carried that so well to where they still have fond memories of him. The John Grisham, the oldest of I can't Jo Mrs. Grisham, I can't remember her first name, but he hosted Focus on the Family's radio theater production of all seven Narnia books and gave like little tidbits about the books and his memories of C.S. Lewis. And so it was really interesting to hear about the books and C.S. Lewis's writing from that perspective, from someone who knew him as a stepfather.
yeah, no, he because he's a really interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now Tolkien,
Tolkien was a different person.
no, I I don't treat Tolkien fairly, but here's why. My first fantasy series was Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I read Tolkien. If I had read it the other way around, I might have appreciated Tolkien a lot more than I do. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I kind of feel like I did it in the wrong order, but that's my order now. So it is what it is, right?
Right.
So for me, I still, in my opinion, I think The Hobbit is still an amazing book. Like I'll give like that is a really cool one and done. That's just absolutely incredible, and I will never take away his ability to make languages up. That takes a very
Mm-hmm.
special mind to do that.
Oh, for sure. That's something that I have not attempted to duplicate.
Most don't. It's such a
Even to
that
the
is such
level
a
of Christopher Paolini in his inheritance cycle, which isn't even on the level of
nine
J.R.R.
close.
Tolkien. But I mean, it's still incredibly complex. And I was just like, when I was writing this, I had this brief thought, like, they should have different languages. I'm like, I have 6 different countries. They can't all have different languages because I will be writing this book for 10 years. I can't do that.
Not necessarily for 10 years, but it's a lot more work. Like what made like I'm a big Wheel of Time guy, so what made the Wheel of Time so amazing? It wasn't he was able to make every nation in that world feel different. The
Mm-hmm.
Senshin are very different from the Two Rivers, who are even a little different from Endar, who's different from, I want to say Tarchico, but and who's different from Tyr. All these nations have their own cultural identity, background, their pride. You can sense, see all this stuff, right, in how he did it. So he like the research into cultures, traditions to make these make these characters interesting, like how nations shape men, how their nation, their that shape their values. Then on top of that, how men find their own values in spite of all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a fascinating. That's what makes Wheel of Time so really good. That he was able to do all that and make such a cohesive whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
For as long as he wrote the series, is actually an incredible accomplishment for Robert Jordan,
Yeah.
and
The
that might be the part.
recently came out, didn't it?
The television series just started,
Oh,
but I mean, the books have been around. Dude, I'm 40. I grew up reading. Like that was my teenage books. Like when I was a teenager, book six had come out. So he had been doing like he started that series in 1990
mm-hmm.
and it finished I want to say 2014, 2015, something like that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a
I mean,
long time writing one series.
yes, it is. It is, and Jordan didn't finish it. Like Brandon Sanderson finished it, right? Jordan did write the last chapter, and he wrote a few little pieces of the last three books. But that's the Sanders. Those are three. Brandon Sanderson basically came in to finish the series, and that's what he did. He came in and finished the series because Jordan wasn't going to be able to do it. And so, but at least they knew where they were going. At least they knew where there was an ending, and Sanderson did as good a job as he could, and which those last three books are still really amazing, all things considered. But the detail, the planning, like you could just see it, like that is a master stroke, and that's what can make fantasy stories really challenging. Actually, is
Yes.
you have to almost build a meta story in fantasy, and the meta can totally dictate the story you really want to tell, and it's such a tricky balance.
It definitely is, and I found that as I've written my own story, because oh gosh, because well, I mean, there are six initial political systems that I had to kind of understand, even though they're not shown fully, and then they combine in the second book, and then they're exposed to even more systems because they find out that there's a whole different side to the world. Because unlike our world, I've made it a flat sort of planet, but then I thought, well, why would there only be one side? It's there if it's flat, there's another side. So there's two entire worlds that are separated by something. Isn't separated. I haven't found a way to really explain what I see in my head other than it's kind of like a coin with a tail side and a head side. So going with that visualization for it, but then there's political systems on that side, and there's a religious system that works differently depending on where you are in the world. Because for some, it's like the religion and political systems are the same thing. The elves of Arborea in my series are a theocracy, but Vidania, the human nation, is a constitutional monarchy that has it functions almost like England, where the king's sort of the head of the church, but he's mostly a figurehead for the state. And oh gosh, and then one of the nations in Luxterra just doesn't really participate in the religious system because they are opposed to the god, and it's a whole system that felt so beyond me when I was writing it that I kind of like I had to step back and figure out how it all worked at one point because I ran into such a roadblock. I was like, "Well, did I do that? That doesn't work." And it was you have to really create an entirely separate reality that's functional um, when you're writing a fantasy series that I don't think you have to do with other types of books.
Well, it depends on the books, right? There's different kind of fantasies, right? Let's give you some. Some of them are more like just they're fun, like Alana Andrews' Kate Daniels series. It
Mm-hmm.
is an urban fantasy, and it's definitely got a mythology to it. Like you can definitely see the mythology of the series and where it goes, but it's loose. It's not something that they have to put a ton of time into. But when you're doing like an epic fantasy, you almost have to understand. Like I mentioned Brandon Sanderson already. I think the cool thing about Brandon Sanderson is he has a tendency to understand the system of the world he bids, like in terms of how does the magic work.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is. If I ever get a chance to have him on the show, and trust me, I am trying. One of the things I kind of want to talk to him about is I believe he has the same belief I do, which is that technology dictates the politics of the world. And in fantasy books, magic is technology. So ergo, his magic systems dictate his politics, and it's a really ingenious way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say circumventing it completely because he doesn't. He doesn't shortcut exactly, but he does a really good job of focusing on one aspect of culture and civilization and go, okay, this is one of the key building blocks of this civilization.
Yeah.
So how does that affect everything else? And from there, you build your system accordingly,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think is a genius way to build a fantasy world. But when you start, you may not understand. Like I almost feel like if you're doing epic fantasy, you have to have at least somewhat of a basic understanding of history.
Yeah.
You know, because if
Yeah.
you
I
don't
think
understand it, sorry.
no, I think you're absolutely right because I think if you don't have a basic understanding of history or at least of how history works, then you run the risk of creating a world that isn't believable because history has repeating patterns and themes that if you don't find a way to include that sort of thing in your lore and in your systems, the world will not feel authentic.
Yeah. Well, what tends to happen is, um, it's like one of the biggest things with history is we have a tendency to forget our history or the I would say the term intellectual laziness is a big thing in today's culture right
Yeah.
now. It's amazing to me how very few people look at things. That's actually something I've noticed, and that I don't care, and I don't care what spectrum you're on any of the issues right now today. It doesn't matter. The amount of people that just blindly follow is incredible on any side of this.
On either side, yes, exactly. Because, and I see that with the community that I'm in, I see that in my family, I see just sort of blindly accepting the narrative from whatever side of the political spectrum they happen to be on. And unfortunately, that kind of bias it creates intellectual laziness, I think, because there's so many layers to what's going on that just accepting what the media or what you heard from someone in church or um, one politician just doesn't give you a whole picture.
Well, how do I put this? Right? There's no such thing as one side being fully right. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what it is, not one side being
Yeah.
fully right. And also the other thing too, and this was a very hard thing for me to accept, so that I had to take a deep breath and do this, and that was the world is bigger than me. It
Mm-hmm.
hurt a lot to admit that. I had to have a little therapy, a little hug, like did I do good kind of thing when it was over. But everybody has a different perspective. And the easy answer is to go, you're wrong. Even if you disagree with the person, and maybe their overall conclusion maybe isn't correct. It's possible. I'm not right about everything either. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, there's a reason people believe what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And to belittle or dismiss that because it's not the prevailing narrative of the day or the prevailing bias of the moment, is foolish, and we do
Mm-hmm.
it all the time.
We
And
actually,
you can, yeah, you seem like I struck a chord there. So
oh no, it's because I see that often because I mean, of course, I work in education, and that comes with its own set of sort of political things going on with that because I mean, we're still kind of at the tail end of this pandemic, and there's stuff continuing to evolve. We had parents in our small school that were upset at the beginning of the year because we didn't have a mask mandate at the beginning of the year in New Mexico, that we weren't requiring all students to wear masks. And then at the same time, we had them, other parents applauding us and saying, thank you for not requiring this. And then we had a mask mandate, and the parents who were happy about us not having one at the beginning of the year were upset that we were still enforcing that, but our hands were kind of tied because we have to go with what the state says schools are supposed to do. And I've heard so many different opinions because students will share opinions on this one thing, and I've just kind of become numb to this because I think that there are valid arguments on both sides of just that one piece. On the one hand, do masks, logically, it seems like they should catch a lot because you're wearing them. They're covering the parts of your face that spread illness and catch illness, so it should help a bit. But then I also, I have colleagues and students that have still caught things like basic colds while wearing masks all day. So it's just kind of like, okay, are we going to say it doesn't work when it does? And it's just, I'm not
well,
stepping on that
no,
at
no, no, no,
all.
no, no.
But there's
We're not gonna
so
go.
much different.
We're not gonna go into too many details. What I will say is, but again, it's not really. If this is where I think we both will agree on, no one's really looking at if it really works. What we're doing is, this is what the mandate for today is, and we're doing it,
Right.
whether it works or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And whatever your opinion on this, listening or watching this, ladies and gentlemen, that's not really the issue. The issue here is,
No.
yeah, right. The issue here is, what I'm saying is, we have this tendency as a culture to pick a side and go, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. And that's it. There's no wriggle room for any other thing, right? At all. So what you happens is you alienate a whole bunch of people,
Exactly.
right? And here's the part that really will annoy some people when I say this. They might be right about something. And if you give them that opportunity to actually just express that opinion, you open dialogue, you actually have the opportunity to either make a compromise or at the very least, if nothing else, hear it out. That's it. Really simple. Most people want to be understood. Most people want to feel like their voice matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you give people that, they may not agree with no one's going to agree on every decision. But that's not what people want. People just want to be heard and they want to feel like what they're saying matters. That's most people. You give people that, you can find a compromise somewhere.
Yeah. I think even if the compromise is we're going to agree to disagree,
Yeah.
I just wish I saw more people just having dialogue instead of screaming and complaining at each other.
Yeah. Oh, like I said, and I've done that on the show. I've had people I hardcore disagree with on some of this stuff. Still
Mm-hmm.
friends. I don't. Yeah, right. It's just that you don't need to. You don't know if this is like what's true today is going to be what you believe tomorrow. I would rather look at it like
Yeah.
I'm not in love with any outcome right now. I do my own research. I have my own opinions, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong on some of my opinions. I actually more than I am right at this point. But that said,
Yeah.
that said, um, I'm not in love either way. I just do the research. I kind of just see the pattern as it unfolds, and I take a guess. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right.
Right.
What it means is this is my opinion. Is it subject to change? Yes. Why? Because I don't know everything. I'm not that smart.
Yeah. I think we have to be flexible with the things that we think, because I know that I've done research on various topics and have changed my opinions on different things, politically, religiously, educate professionally. I think, and this is part of the reason I write and part of the reason I teach, is because I think that story is such a powerful medium for expressing truth in an abstract form. And the more that we read, I think the more we're able to really understand the world around us, regardless of whether you're reading fiction or nonfiction. Just the more that we read, the better we understand the experience that we have as humans.
Well, you think that reading creates empathy. Generally, it creates a certain degree of empathy. And once you have that empathy, you because we when we read a book, we have this ability to experience that character's point of view. Even if it's a
Mm-hmm.
character we don't like, we can learn to understand, and that's a very powerful. It's a powerful tool. It just really
Mm-hmm.
is.
For sure.
And if you can understand somebody, you can actually disagree with them, and it'll be okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you'll understand them, and they'll probably understand you because you've taken the time to listen. It sounds like such a simple thing I just said, but again, a lot of people want to talk,
Yeah.
and not so many want to listen. I mean, I have a Lord knows I have a big mouth.
I think what a lot of people think is that listening is this passive thing, but it really isn't. I think one of the biggest things that this whole pandemic has taught me is that patience, waiting for something, listening, things that I thought were passive or I wasn't doing anything, are some of the most active and intense things that I can do.
Mm-hmm. No, it's like okay, I interview people all the time. I listen a lot to my guests. I can usually figure out things about them, not just what they say, but what they don't say. All
Mm-hmm.
right, and I learned something about the person sometimes with just not even consciously registering it, and just like okay, and that's powerful. If I again, it makes me closer to understanding you, and even if I'm wrong about my guesstimate, that's fine too, right? But it gives me a reference to start and just kind of just okay, am
Mm-hmm.
I on something or am I on to something? I mean, we'll figure that out afterwards. But like, that's
Right.
you're right. It's just, but it's one of those things where, yeah, like I think the ultimate lesson I've learned is, to me, no virus is as scary as fear. And the fact of the matter is, I think fear is the real infection that needs to be purged. It's not virus is going to do its thing. I don't have a really good answer to it. I don't really think a good answer currently exists, and that's probably as close as we're going to get into this episode about that. Um, and that's fine. Then what I would rather help tell people is that no matter what, life's going to go on.
Right.
No matter what, you can still be kind to people, and no matter what, you don't have to be afraid. And I think that's a very big thing. Like we all have, I think, have come face to face with mortality a little bit through this, which I think is not in itself a bad thing. We were
Yeah.
right, but we can't be terrified of our mortality. We should embrace it instead, and then go forward and live because it's all
Yeah.
God.
I I was listening to the last little bit of Rick Riordan's first entry in his um, Trials of Apollo series yesterday. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but the goddess Calypso in his series gives up her immortality to come back to the real world after leaving Ogygia, and it's interesting to see the dichotomy of how becoming immortal affects Apollo versus how it affects Calypso. Apollo's desperate to get back this immortality and this safety of godliness, whereas Calypso has come to the realization that she can't fear. She just has to live her life and take what comes. And I'm pretty sure that the series came out long before the pandemic started, but it was so interesting for me to read that and think that's timely. Because we have to live. We can't pause because who knows how long it will go on, and then time will have passed us by. And what will we have lost wallowing in fear?
Well, that's just it. Life is change. Change has always been terrifying.
Yeah.
Always has been. So,
Right.
trying to get to this point of security is ultimately futile.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, I don't want to necessarily freeze in the cold. I want to have the food in my belly. And there's some basic needs we all kind of want. But when you sit there and really think about it, there are no guarantees with anything. Absolutely anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if life is change. Period. And so that means you have to embrace the unknown. Those things you're terrified of, you're uncomfortable about, the way through it is to face those very things you're afraid of. Go through those uncomfortable things you want to avoid. You can't. The door to your freedom is through those things. Always has been, always will be. And will you find more uncomfortable things on the other side? Absolutely. But that's how we grow. We don't grow in security and safety. Apollo was perfectly content just to be exactly who he is, and he never wanted to change. And why would he? He's the sun god.
Right.
He's a prick. You kind of want to punch in the face. Just in general. Like even like mythology wise, Apollo's story of all the gods, he's probably the one I wanted to punch most in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Zeus. Maybe
yeah,
Zeus.
I was gonna say Zeus is probably up there.
Yeah, maybe Zeus more, but it's not by much. It's actually not that far apart.
It really isn't.
Yeah, it's not that far apart. Zeus is an honest whore. Like he's honest. He doesn't. Yeah, he's a whore, but he's an honest one.
Yeah.
Apollo's just a dick. Apollo's just a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we're trashing Greek mythology on this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We will go literally anywhere. So, right.
I mean, there's so much to trash because the Greek pantheon was so incredibly. I feel like they almost wrote them to feel better about their own lives.
Well,
at least some of them, because I mean, it's just so human, but like the worst parts of humanity in some circumstances.
Well, here's the thing. Both, right? So my book's now Alice in Wonderland Greek Mythology Math Shop. She's playing croquet against Jason of the Argonauts. Jason's an asshole. You read his story, he's not he's a hero basically in name only.
Mm-hmm.
He betrays everybody, he lies to everybody, he's conniving, he's cheating. He will do whatever it takes to win. The only reason he's the hero of the story is because he does win.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And victors get to write the history books.
That's right. And it's part of maybe that's one of the big lessons there. But if you look at the rest of the gods, all the gods, because I've been playing in that world quite a bit, because I'm dealing with Alice in Wonderland, trying to fight all these various dealing with various Greek mythologies. And what I've noticed is what the gods actually represent is security. They never have to change. And why would they? They're all powerful. They have everything taken care of. In one sense, actually, I pity them. And that's because while I may never have the ability to shoot lightning out of my hands, who knows? Maybe that happens someday. I'm not going to say it never will happen, but it's not likely.
Science does amazing things. We don't know.
We don't know. And hey, anything. I have this really like this might be the craziest thing about me. I truly do believe anything is possible. So who knows? I might wake up and I might learn how to fly. It is entirely a possibility. Do I foresee it? But again, it's not.
We're
It's not even.
straddle the line between probability and possibility.
Yeah. Like I said, but again, I mean, the odds of me existing as is having this conversation with you is somewhere around 64 billion to one. So I mean, it's something. It is possible to beat the odds. We'll just say that, right? So, so I look at it kind of like anything truly is possible. But that all said, no matter what happens tomorrow, I'm going to change. And then the day after, I'm going to change again. And then the day after, I'm going to change again. I'm going to be hopefully a better person. I hope. Some days I won't be. I will take a step backwards because I'm human and I'm a fuck up. And that's just, and I'm good with, and I acknowledge that I have shortcomings and I have limitations. But pushing against those things, I learn more things about myself.
Yeah.
And I keep going. And that's what it's about. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be the same person that started off on this journey. How can I be? Life requires me to constantly evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What has to be fought in this world is something trying to stop the tides of change. Because you can't. I'd rather be prepared to deal with change than try to stop it.
I think that that's one of the things that is hardest to learn in life is just to be prepared for change and to work through it. But it's such an important concept, and I think that unknowingly at the time I worked those kinds of things into my own story because two of the biggest symbols in it are fire and water. Fire and water are powerful natural forces that change the world around them in drastically different ways. Fire is can be seen as mostly destructive, but oftentimes it brings warmth. It changes the world for the better in some ways. The same can be said for water. It brings life and growth, but it can also cause horrible devastation. And I think that the dichotomy there is an interesting play.
So it's funny. Did you ever play a game called Magic the Gathering?
I did not know.
Okay. So my favorite color setting is literally the fire and water colors, red and blue. They're fire and water, and it's just like, but it's just like fire can be passion, fire can be drive, ambition, a little aggression. Not always a bad thing to be aggressive. It's not always a bad thing to be passionate. It's right. And these are like the things that feel kind of volatile. Like fire is a very volatile thing. Water is a very calm thing. Water takes the shape of the container. It can adapt to a lot of different things. But put a drip in the water into the wall, eventually the wall will give out. Right? Eventually, like it's water has a certain inevitability to it, and fire is just a powerful corrosive force. So I mean, and perhaps the biggest lesson from both of those is that it can be a good and bad thing, right? And no matter, and I guess the one thing I guess I learned about fire in particular is no matter how bad it might seem in that moment, some good does come out of it.
Yeah. I think that, we often look at bad things in our lives as just fully bad. Like for me, at the beginning of this year, I lost a friend, and the grief from that caused me to lose my job in January, and I had nothing to do except write, which is how Eternity's Well was finished. I had nothing else to do, and so I poured all of the energy that I had been spending working into a different kind of work. And the momentum has kept going.
No, I just, you know who you are when things are hardest.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like, you know exactly who you are. What do you do when times are tough? That's you. That is always going to be you. So, and anyone that's gone through these points in time, right, will hopefully learn something and get better. It sounds like for you, you found what you were looking for in
Yeah.
that. In spite of all the bad that came from that, the good that came from it was you finally had time to do something you always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. It was such a huge thing for me. I told my wife and my family I feel more accomplished than when I turned in my final assignment for my degree, my bachelor's. And I think it's because, I had been used to going to school, and so college was difficult, and I definitely had struggles getting my degree because I don't know if you heard this statistic. That's a hard word for me to say. But college students today have the same level of anxiety as mental hospital patients in the 1970s. So it's such a there needs to be some change there as well, but that is prevalent. And so I went through all that for 5 years because my degree was a 5-year degree. For reasons I still don't understand. But the friend that I lost in January were basically like brothers. We became family to the point where like we spent the holidays together even before we met. When I started my job, my first job there. And he didn't die. Like, he chose to end the friendship because his fiance, now wife, for some reason, she still don't understand. And so that loss was so palpable that a lot of things that I felt like I wanted to say to him made its way into the book. The way that the main characters interact with each other, and the way that certain things played out were directly taken and adapted as catharsis. And I don't think I would have been able to finish the book because I'd started it in college. I don't think I would have been able to finish the book the way it is now if it had not been for that experience. I hate the experience, and I hope that we're healing something. But I can't say that I wish it didn't happen at this point because everything with my writing career and the trajectory that I'm on, I owe to that experience and the way that it happened.
So, when I went to fix my teeth, I lost a friend too, but it was for a very different reason. And I'll tell you this straight up. The incident happened. The incident really wasn't what was important. What was important was the realization that I wasn't trusted with my own emotions, and I wasn't going to be treated like that would ever happen. And I realized that if I'm not trusted, what kind of friendship did we actually have?
Mm-hmm.
And it changed. And then I lost a friend. We never really reconciled. We probably had chances, and I definitely played my part in messing some of those chances up for sure. But when it comes right down to is once trust was gone, it was like, what did we have? And I never really got a good answer to that question. And I didn't like that answer because it forced me to make a very hard choice. What did I want? Did I want to be treated fairly, or did I want this friendship? And if I said that I wanted this friendship, what does it say about how I want to be treated going forward?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to look at what I really wanted what I got from it, was I understood something very human and very truthful. I realized I wasn't just serving my wants, I was serving his. Because his wants were, he only wanted to treat me a certain way. And it was the only condition I was going to have to be that friend. And I decided that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to be treated better. And if that meant I lost the friendship, so be it. And then I realized there's something very, very important from that point on. And it made it actually easier to forgive them too, which was everybody does what they want to do. No matter what, everybody does. The honest question there was, what do people really want in that situation? And that's a very powerful thing I just stated.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I hadn't had to lose the friendship to do it. I miss my friend.
Yeah.
I miss my friend, but it also gave me the opportunity to learn how to be more forgiving, not just to everyone else around me, but to myself too.
And
Would
I
I
think
have?
that's a big thing to learn too.
Yeah, and would I have learned that way if I hadn't had what happened in the friendship? I'm not sure. But it's helped me not just my personal relationships; it's also helped me in my business relationships too.
Mm-hmm.
Because understanding that gives me a certain understanding how to negotiate, right? And what it is I want. More importantly, understanding what my client, customer, whatever you want to call it, wants to. Because again, it's all about what you want. And it's about, and if do I want a paycheck? Will I settle for a certain treatment? Or will I charge more for it?
Mm-hmm.
And right there's a and that's the majority of like freelance writing right there, is understanding that part of the mentality. But at all that to say, all these lessons came from a horrible experience.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I didn't have to go through it, but the horrible experiences made me me.
Yeah, and I think that one of the biggest things that we can do when recovering, and this is definitely a theme I touch on in the books, because the characters go from caring about something that happened to them, because they all experience tragedy right at the beginning of the book. Elliot, the main character, watches as his brother walks into a building and then it magically disappears. No trace whatsoever. Opal loses her father to some heart condition and has to take over the kingdom and live up to this huge legacy from her entire dynasty. Nyx watches as his father is killed in front of him in a military coup, and then his best friend. All of them have this incredible loss that they start out with, and they have to go from, I'm hurting and I want something, to, there is a world outside of me and I have something to bring because of what I've gone
Yep. And that's a huge part of life. Sometimes sometimes our tragedies gives us empathy,
through. Mm-hmm.
which is why sometimes bad things happening to you is a good thing in the long run. It's shitty in the moment, but it's good in the long run.
Oh gosh, definitely in the moment. Oh, it was the
Yeah,
first time I'd ever had to be on antidepressants. Thankfully, I was able to get off of them after a couple months, but I needed something to get me through January, February.
no,
Oh,
losing friends in some ways is harder than losing family, because um, you choose your friends.
mm-hmm.
Like, you choose your friends. And one of the hardest things you learn in that situation is you're going to make bad mistakes in the relationships you choose sometimes. And also, in all fairness to my situation, it's not like I made the bad choice. We just grew in different directions.
Yeah.
It happens. I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of life. Like we only have a set amount of time with each other, whatever that set amount of time is.
Yeah.
So instead of like dwelling on that limitation, it's just better to embrace the time you have and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. And I don't look back with any regrets other than I wish that things could have gone differently there at the end. Um, but I think one thing that really helped me and why empathy is so important is I'd known him really, really well. And I was able to look at his past and say, okay, this is the trauma that he went through. This is what the pain triggers are in his life. I don't agree with this choice, but I understand it. And then I got to know his fiance a little bit, not very well, but a little bit, and how she had had an experience with her first marriage where it was her husband paid more attention to his mother than he ever did to her. And so seeing a close friendship probably triggered something where she was afraid. And I don't like how they handled it. I don't like that past trauma definitely dictated what happened. But it also helped me to really move on and forgive in a way that if I was not an empathetic person, I don't think I could have. I don't agree with the choice. I don't agree with the way that was handled. Um, but it took me from a place of really being angry to when I understood why it happened, um, to really being able to understand and not necessarily have pity, but empathize and be able to say, okay, you've got your own thing to work on. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to move on and do what I need to do to be okay.
So, last thought, because I don't want to dwell on. Like, I'm just gonna say this to you straight up. I'm sorry for your loss, because that is a hard loss. But at the same time, so nature of love. I first girl I fell in love with was not a great choice for me,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a great lesson for me because I realized something very very important. Like I was always going to love this person, no matter what they chose to do with their lives. I'm always going to love them. But that love is a different. But love, if you really understand what love is, it's not about necessarily what they do for you per se. If you truly
Mm-hmm.
love somebody, you let them be themselves. You give them the freedom to be themselves, and you give them, and you have the faith and the hope that someday things will be different, and they might be. Like I mean, down the road, who knows? But in the moment, you just say, you know what, I love you. I wish you well. I thank you for everything. And then you go, well, you move on
Mm-hmm.
because that's what life is. And that's still love them, and you always will. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's actually a great thing because it meant something, and it meant something to you. It meant something to them too. It may not mean the same thing exactly, but it meant something, and that matters, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you're like, this is not what I expected in this interview.
It's not, but it's okay. I think most of the interviews, what have you been inspired in? And I'm like, you can read that interview. That interview is available to be read and rewatched over and over again. I think that having a little bit something different was refreshing. Um, and talking about things that aren't, I think I've gotten to touch upon some of the deeper aspects of my books and sort of the personal inspiration for what finished it as opposed to what started it. I think most people are interested in what Or how are you inspired? What got the book started? And what got the book started is very different from what finished it. And because I had taken almost a 1.5 year break from writing at that point.
Okay. How do I put this? Usually, the books you write are a reflection of the person writing them. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's one thing, it's not the story we tell, it's the voice we bring to telling it that makes it different. Right? Right? Every story has been told, but it's who tells it that really truly matters.
Yeah,
And
I think that's true.
yeah, so in that case, it's about what you care about. Because you're going to bring the best and worst parts of yourself out when you truly care.
Mm-hmm.
Loss, people will feel it. There's just something about human nature that we can feel it when a writer really, really cares about whatever it is, whether it's loss, anger, pain, right? Curiosity, love, laughter. We can feel all that. That's why we read books. We don't read them because of clever wordplay. I mean, that can make it fun.
It's more the frosting on the cake than the
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
base.
exactly. What it really is how do I make you feel?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the biggest gratifying moments to me when I've heard people talk about reading my books to me have been like, this part made me cry, or, I really like this character because of this. Um, Seeing the story, not just, oh, that was nice to read, but hearing, oh, that made an impact on me in this way. And, if I was writing things just to be entertaining, I could write almost anything else. But I think that the medium and the genre that I chose allows me to create a commentary on real issues that are part of everyday life and approach them in a way that makes them not hurt so much to read about, because it's set in a different world to species and people that don't really exist. But they do exist in our hearts. I think story is one of the most powerful ways of teaching and of learning that we have. There's a reason why mythology and certain stories and legends have remained with us, and it's because they are integral to the human experience.
So I think maybe we'll close the interview with this last big thought. So, whatever you may think about J.K. Rowling right this minute, Harry Potter's awesome. Harry Potter's awesome. Okay? My favorite line in the whole series is actually, so my favorite scene is when Harry talks to Dumbledore in King's Cross, which leads to a
After,
very which leads to a very interesting question. Did he ever really truly talk to Dumbledore because of one line that was said in there that I still love to this day? As he makes his decision to go back to the real world, he goes and he asks Dumbledore, "Is this real, or is this all in my head?" And Dumbledore goes, "Of course it's all in your head, but why would that make that any less real?" And I think it's one of the most profound things in that entire series. There's a lot of good moments in there, but that's one of the most profound.
mm-hmm.
We none of us see the world the exact same way. Ever. We're all a little insane. We all truly are.
We're all mad here.
Yeah, we all are. I had this interview where it's like, can you imagine putting all the different worlds we all see on the same? No, there is no way. We all of us are crazy. We all have superstitions. We all have things we're absolutely crazy about. We obsess over the weirdest shit at the best of times, right? That's right. That's who we are. So lot of the world we see is truly in our heads,
Mm-hmm.
but it's nonetheless, it's very real. And if you can understand that about everybody, because you're no different than anybody, then you'll be able to reach out and make a difference to everybody. And great writers do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we have an interview here. What do you think?
I think we have an interview.
Have fun? Did you have fun?
I did. Thank you so much.
So I guess we should probably like promote your book and stuff. So I
A little
mean,
bit. That's
just a little bit, right? I mean, that's what it's about. A little bit at the end of the chat. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna first before we get to that. Good luck with your creative writing.
Thank you.
I almost want to give you two pieces of advice, but I don't know if I know you well enough to give them to you. Would you like to hear both?
Go ahead. I'll take advice, or I'll listen to advice and then decide if it's worth taking it. Because, I mean, I think that we all should listen to each other even if we're not going to take everything as gospel.
I absolutely. This is a guess. This part here is a guess. If I'm wrong, call me on it, okay?
Okay.
All right, call me on it. I get the feeling one of your, I'm not going to say necessary weaknesses, but I get the feeling you're one of those people that occasionally struggles with disciplining themselves and getting the task done.
Occasionally.
Yes. Occasionally. Because I just get the impression you're one of those kind of guys that gets bored. And because he gets bored, you have a tendency to kind of go, la, 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 la.
I have ADHD, so it's definitely been something that I've had to work through and with.
Yeah. So okay, so I did read that correctly then, by and large. Okay, so the hardest thing, I have 8 rules to success. The first rule is the hardest rule, and it's 2 words. And it's dumb. I always feel it's the dumbest rule I have, but it's the one I found is the one where most succeed. Rule 1. Show up.
Yep.
For you, the challenge for you is not fun when it's not. You have to find the reason to keep going. I mean, taking a break again. Obviously, take some breaks every once in a while, but you don't need the help to know when that is. I just think sometimes for you it's the other way. You got to go. Okay, I got to get this shit done. I got to show up and get this shit done. You do that. You
how
do
the
that.
Second book got.
Yes, you do that, you will go far. But if I were to make a guess on you personally, that's probably the one thing you personally need to work on the most. I could be wrong. If I am, by all means, like I said, call me out on it. It's okay. I'm not.
I've gotten better at it, but it was a good guess. I think that writing the second book was definitely more challenging in that I had readers that were expecting another book,
which probably helped push you through, but also kind of scared you a little bit.
Right? A little bit, but it was also really inspiring. And now I've had beta readers read the third book. Wait, no, they've read the second book and they're wanting the third book. I'm like,
no, it's that's a good problem to have.
It's coming.
So and the last piece of advice, I don't know if this is going to apply to you exactly, but I've noticed this with writing groups and other writers in general. We're a pretentious sort at the best of times. Sometimes universities tend to bring out the worst of those traits.
It is true.
Right. Sometimes. So this is just me more looking out for you. Never seek permission to tell the tales you feel you need to tell. No matter what happens here, you've done it. You've already proven to yourself you've done it. So you don't need validation. You don't need permission. Just go out there and fucking do it.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
People should write what they want, right?
Yeah. But I mean, just those are the 2 things that kind of felt like you needed to hear. I don't know why, but I just felt like it's like, okay, here we go. I'm a little crazy. It's um, but no, good luck. And
Thank
I
you.
hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you meet the right people. I hope you learn the things you need to learn. But most of all, have the confidence that you can do it and look honestly at the things you do to get your own way. If you can do that, you'll succeed. Whether you want traditional, indie, whatever you choose to do, it will be possible.
Absolutely.
All right. So, sorry. By the way, if I come off as preachy, I'm sorry. Next time I'll
Oh,
pass it.
it's all right. I'm a teacher, so I do it all the time. It's okay for me to sometimes receive that end of it.
Yes. Yes. Uh, but you've done 2 books. That's cool. So the first one's out, then I take it, and the second
The
one's
first one is out. The second one's coming out in March.
Okay. So what's the first one called?
The first one is Eternity's Well.
Like this, or we're gonna see if I know what I'm doing. Is it like that?
So ETERNITY apostrophe S. Yes.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So it's called Eternity's Well. It's written by you. It's the first book. And you know how many books this is gonna be? Or do you?
It's a 5-book arc. The main series will be a 5-book arc, and I have some spin-offs that I would love to do, sort of a prequel series.
Dude, you're gonna be in this. So listen, there's nothing wrong with it. You might be the next Terry Brooks or Raymond Weiss. Isn't that a bad spot to be in writing career?
Oh gosh. Don't tell me which shoes I have to fill or I might back off.
Dude, all good masters seek the same thing. Kill the Buddha. You definitely can. It's not like it's not. And I say it's not with like. So I mentioned one of the writers. So my favorite writers growing up were, I love C.S. Lewis, but if I really had to pick 2, it would be Ray Bradbury, right? It'd be actually 3: Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, and Roger Zelazny. And I love me some Michael. And Michael Moorcock's super fun. I love Michael Moorcock. He's like this rad, really fun. But what I want to do is I want to tell books like them, short, dense, fun reads. That's what I want, right? And that's what I'm going to do because that's who I am. Sometimes they're going to be epic poems like the current Alice in Wonderland. Sometimes they're going to be some weird hodgepodge mixed match Japanese light novel because that's who I am. And that's who I'm going to be. And I'm going to tell my stories my way. But those are the people I'm looking at. It's like, I want to tell better stories than what they can tell. Even if I fall short of that goal, I should seek, like, they've already set a bar. I want to see if I can move past it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if I'm saying Raymond Weiss, Terry Brooks, dude, that's a bar you might be able. That's a cool bar to try to climb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the book's out now. You can get it everywhere, I assume. Amazon, Kindle.
Yeah, Amazon Kindle, Apple, Kobo, Barnes & Noble. Right now, Barnes & Noble is the only one that has a hardback edition, if that's important to anyone. But yeah, that is out and available.
And if people want to talk to you, where do they go?
So my website's a good start. So that's ZacharyHagenWrites.com. And there's a contact me section on there.
Like that?
Yep, exactly like that. Zachary Hagen Writes on Facebook is a page, and then Zachary Hagen _Writes on TikTok.
On TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So give me a second here. I'm just doing something very quickly here because I want to pretend I'm a professional and stuff. Don't tell anybody I did that here. No. Zachary Hagen Writes is. That's you on TikTok?
There's an underscore between Hagen and Writes for TikTok. Yep. And then Facebook and yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
And all of the social media links are on the website as well. So
yeah, so I'll just leave it like that. So for everybody watching, for everybody listening. First off, thank you, Zach, for putting up with my terrible promo skills at the very
That's all right.
on second hand.
Great thing about the website is anyone who's interested can learn more about the books that are out and the upcoming ones, and sign up for my newsletter.
Cool. Give me a second here. This thing decided to.
Then if you decide you love the books and you want to help me make them happen quicker, I also have a Patreon on there as well.
Okay, there you go. My microphone's back. It didn't. The little piece did it. So where's the Patreon address? Because that one seems important.
Sorry, what was that?
Your Patreon is Zach Hagen, right? Zachary Hagen writes too.
Yeah, and that's listed on the website as well.
Okay, I'll put that one in there because that one seems important. To everybody watching, to everybody listening, I want to first thank Zach very much for being able to deal with me for about over an hour. He was a good sport about the whole thing. You're welcome to come back anytime you'd like, Zach. So if you do want to come back and do this again, let me know for sure. But to everybody watching, to everybody listening, this Wednesday, that's my book. You can order it now on Amazon, Alice 1. If you want to see Alice play croquet against Jason of the Argonauts in the Greek underworld.
Yes.
Yeah. I guarantee you will not look at the Greek labyrinths the same way ever again. And beyond that, it comes out this Wednesday. My Twitch is just Joshing Podcast. Hit the like, follow button if you're here. If you are on my YouTube, it's Joshua Pintello Resco. Hit like, subscribe, enable notifications. And this is it for the weekend. Monday, I have the band Ravenous showing up. It's going to be a fun little experience. Thanks, Zach, for coming. Everybody watching. Oh, anytime, dude. You were a great chat. To everyone watching, everybody listening, stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I will see you guys Monday.